Hey everyone, this is Tiqqle, and in this video we're going over my keybinds for an Enhancement Shaman. If you are just picking up Enhancement Shaman, or maybe you've played it for years, I'm going to at least show you what keybinds and what macros I use that might help you in a way. Maybe there's something you can take away, and if you do want to know about what's happening with Enhancement Shaman, I have videos down below about what's happening in the pre-patch, what's happening in Shadowlands to the entire class, because is the most changed class in the game. So definitely peep it out down there, but let's go ahead and jump into it. Let's just talk about keybinds first, well, then we'll go into macros. Number one with keybinds, let's go ahead and just show you, if you go into keybinds, the number one thing I recommend for you if you're PvEing or you're PvPing is to look at this page. You want to, my recommendation for you, and you might be really like turning left and right, but I recommend you changing those keybinds A and D to strafe left and strafe left and strafe right. I think that will help you stay mobile, move out of fire faster, and stay up in PvP a bit more. Why is that? Well, I can do this. Like while I'm DPSing, I can always be moving. I don't have to hold down W and something else. The other thing is it frees up my right hand. My right hand needs to be used. I can use it for swiveling around and looking about what's going on in the PvP arena or whatever, right? I don't need to use it to direct my character. But at the same time, my mouse is going to be used for other things in PvP specifically, which I'll get into in a little bit later about the macros I'm using with my Corsair Scimitar to make me be able to switch targets very easily in PvP. And in PvE, I'll probably be using my mouse for some cooldowns and potions and consumables as well. So you want to have that hand kind of free. So with that being said, that was just one basic thing that maybe you never really thought about, but that's what I do use. I also unkeybind backpedal, wherever the heck that even would be. Where is it? Like move back, wherever it is. Basically, I unkeybound that and I keybound that to something else, but that was just more of like training myself to not backpedal. But backpedaling can actually be useful in PvE and in PvP, particularly by tanks. But let's go ahead and just keep kind of going through it. Let's talk about my offensive DPS abilities, especially what's on my bar down here. Number one, I try to keep everything around my movement keys, my W, A, S, D, right? With no S. And so what do? I keep my melee buttons for enhance on 3, 4, and C. C, okay, you might be like, that's kind of a weird one. Well, it's only really weird because it's over here on my bar. But basically, I want to be able to use with my index and middle finger certain abilities and then being able to fill any type of like button pressing gap with another key ability. So being able to use like multiple fingers for multiple abilities, I think is pretty important if you're trying to look for a smooth rotation. You don't want to just be like this button, then this button, then this button, because you're getting some gap of time while you're moving your finger. That might seem like a super sweaty try hard thing, but from a smoothness, it makes a difference. So I keep my Storm Strike on 4, 3 is Lava Lash, C is Crash Lightning. Now, as an Enhancement Shaman, again, if you don't know about this, you should definitely check out the video below, but casted abilities are definitely in the mix. I keep those between 2, T, and Shift 1. Seems a little weird. Shift 1 is one that is going to be situational or is going to be not necessarily always used or always available. That's why I put Elemental Blast there. I then keep Lightning Bolt on T and Chain Lightning on 2. If I'm doing PvE and Mythic Pluses, I'll keep Chain Lightning there. Otherwise, I'll switch these two around if I'm doing PvP or single target DPS. I'll switch things around a little bit, but these are where I'm going to be spending my Maelstrom. It's going to be my Lightning Bolt, my Chain Lightning, and my Elemental Blast. So if I keep it like this, I'll be able to do my Storm Strikes and then have my other finger ready to press Chain Lightning whenever I need to. Okay, so that's how I'm spending my Maelstrom, and that's how my range abilities are set up for Enhanced Shaman. Also, I have F being my heal. Heal is going to be able to use your Maelstrom weapon stacks as well, and I keep heal like Ghost Wolf and certain abilities on the same exact buttons between all the Shaman specs. That way your muscle memory can build up for certain things like healing or CC or interrupt or stuff like that. So I recommend, no matter what class you play, try to stay consistent with those keybinds. It'll help you stay consistent with knowing what button does what. Like for example, my Wind Shear is always on tilde, which is right next to the 1 button, to the left of the 1 button. So I always have my interrupt there. Always, on every single character, no matter what. That's why it's so easy for me to keybind new characters, is because I know exactly where I want what buttons. So with that being said, I also have F1 as being Flame Shock and 1 being Frost Shock. These are kind of filler abilities, and I always have Flame Shock and F1. I just can't not do it. But these are things I'll be using situationally, or I'll just be doing it as like a debuff type cooldown. I also have offensive cooldowns on F2 and F3, so if I know I'm going to have to do big damage, I can press that. Or I can press my dogs on F3. I have Earthen Spike on 5 and Chain Harvest on 6. Usually 5 and 6 are major offensive cooldowns. Earthen Spike being 5. That's where I'll usually put Ascendance as well if I wanted to use that. And it just makes it, makes a big deal if they're all kind of grouped around where you're pressing buttons. Now I usually use an offensive trinket on Shift 2, which is a little bit harder keybind. We're going into shift modifiers and alt modifiers now. Shift modifiers and alt modifiers for me, I usually put things that I'm not always pressing, might have a 1 to 2 minute cooldown. They will also be situational, like we'll get into the totem soon. So that's what I do here. Shift 2 is my trinket. Shift 3 is a totem that I can put out on a 30-second cooldown, but it's situational. In PvE, I don't need it all the time. In PvP, I probably should be using it all the time. And then I have my Covenant abilities, like I mentioned, on 6 and Shift 4. Shift 4 because I'm not going to press it that often, and really it's, not that I should not press it, but it's just a way for me to keep it out of the fray. V is always Hex, or it's Polymorph, or it's Fear, or it's any of those types of buttons. That's where I put that CC. Shift V is a kind of an awkward keybind, but it's any type of cooldown that I'm not going to be using, or I'm rarely going to be using. Now for Enhance, I will often switch certain shift modifiers around depending on what I'm doing. If I'm like Earth Shield, I might put a Shift 1 and switch with Elemental Blast down here, put that over here, because I won't be chain lightning very much, so I will kind of switch things around. The more often I want to use an ability, the easier the keybind should be. That should be the rule. The more offensive and important it is to your DPS rotation, or potentially your cooldowns, the easier it should be as well. So just keep those rules in mind because you want it to be smooth. You don't want to focus about your rotation. You don't want to think about it too much. You want to be focusing on whatever else is going on with the boss fight that's happening, the arena match, what your teammates are doing, what other people are doing. You want it to be smooth. Weak auras will definitely help you with that. And if you want to see what weak auras I recommend to use, let me know down below in the comments. But for now, that's we're kind of up to here. I always have Q be my Ghost Wolf because I'm always going in and out of it in PvE and PvP, and I just love the ability. So that's that. E is always Purge. It's a very important cooldown in PvE and in PvP. If something gets a buff in PvE, you better purge that off. It's probably about to do something very bad, and it's usually it's one of the things about Shaman that makes us unique, so we need to use that to our advantage. Down here in the bottom right of these action bars, Astral Shift is Alt Q. Might be a little bit weird, but it's going to be situational when I use this, so I don't need it to be on a super easy to use keybind. Spirit Walk, which is anything mobility, I put on Shift R, so this is a sprint and a root break. I have S being Wind Fury Totem. This is because I'm going to press this button so much, it should be hecka easy to use. I'm expecting this to have an important role as well, so that's why we're putting it there. Now, let's go ahead and move to the right side. I have my totems on Alt 1, 2, 3. Alt 1 being Healing Stream Totem. Alt 2 being Grounding, and Alt 3 being Tremor. These are situational. They do have kind of a relatively short cooldown of 1 minute, 30 seconds to 30 seconds, but in general, I'm not always going to be pressing them, so I don't need to have them be like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 keybind. Now, I also have Earth Ally on Alt E. This is something I change depending on the class, but we'll have that there. I have Dispel always on Alt R. I'd never not have it there. I have Feral Lunge be Alt T, because again, that's situational. And then I have Shift E, Shift F. These are buttons that I don't really expect to use very often, like once every 5 minutes for Lust, and Chain Heal not often at all. Now I do have my caps lock is my interrupt. I always have it on caps lock. I've had it that way forever. That's my focus interrupt. So if I target this guy, I go over here. I'll put the mark on him. I will wind shear him with my caps lock. Now, Shift C is my trinket, my PvP trinket, only used every 2 minutes, and if that. Now, I will replace some of my PvP talent slots like Alt 2 and Shift C with PvE things like consumables, health potions, unused potions, stuff like that. But generally, this is my main bar of my rotation. So if you guys have any questions or have any suggestions, let me know down below, or if you want to share some cool stuff you do, happy to learn a little bit more about what you guys do as well. Now on the right side, the only keybinds I have over here are up here, and this would be 9 buttons down, basically how how I'm targeting enemy teammates in 3v3 arena, and how I target my teammates and win shear the enemy. So we'll go over that next in the Corsair Scimitar kind of walkthrough after we go through the macros. There are some important macros for your PvE and PvP needs. I think there are a lot more for PvP than necessarily PvE. Luckily, Enhanced Shaman is not a heavy macro class from my view. The only ones that I would particularly point out is that the Flame Shock mouse over could be very useful, especially so you're not clicking those targets. It makes things a lot smoother. Also, with the reduction of GCDs, it hasn't really affected an Enhanced Shaman, but I still think it is important if you're going to be making a burst macro to do so. To add those racials, potions, trinkets, and the even ability in there like Ascendance. Ascendance on your press will be doing big AoE damage. So that could be something that you definitely want to go for. Now, the other macros here are particularly for PvP, other than the cursor macros, making it so you have one less key pressed, or sorry, one less click to make, because you're going to press the ability and it will just drop the totem instead of pressing the ability and then targeting and then pressing your mouse. This is very critical, especially for PvP, but even for PvP, but even for PvE, it makes it a big deal and it makes the class feel a lot more responsive. Once you get used to this, you'll like your shaman even more. Now for the PvP macros, I think the most important for an Enhanced Shaman is Wind Shear and Focus Hex, mainly because Focus Wind Shear will allow you to get kicks without even looking at the target, and with a 12-second cooldown on that interrupt, it is very strong. The other very important one will be the Earth Shield. Earth Shielding your party, or Earth Shielding anyone in your group, or your tank, or anyone in your arena team, will be a pretty big deal, especially if we're going that Earth Shield Legendary. That'll make it very smooth and will maximize the ability for you to do damage and not think about refreshing that through clicking or switching targets or stuff like that. Now, the other thing that you should know is if you're going to be running Shamanism, and if you're Enhanced Shaman, you're going to be, you need to get a Bloodlust macro for the PvP side of things. This is slash casting with the target's name and giving them Bloodlust. This will be a shorter cooldown than you're used to in PvP, but this will allow you to give your party member that buff without switching targets. Again, switching targets just takes you out of the groove, takes you out of the pump mindset. Now, those are really the only macros that I'm using for Enhance. If you guys have other ones, please let me know down below. But the other thing I want to go into now is targeting. Now, targeting is a very big deal in PvP, and that's why I have a Corsair Scimitar. Using this mouse, I'm able to use the buttons on the side, and any MMO mouse will really work. But the way I've done it is I basically align the buttons to the way it looks on the screen. This makes it easier for my mind to know which target is which when I'm pressing the buttons. The other thing is having your target selection. This is all for PvP, of course, on your right hand. My left hand can be focused on movement, and it can focus on doing the DPS rotation. Splitting those two things up is critical, and it just increases your efficiency in my mind. And so I have, the top button targeting the top arena target, middle button, middle arena target, bottom one, bottom arena target. So it's a really easy way to switch targets very quickly. Now, the second column is interrupts. Now, having this focus sheer interrupt is extremely important, specifically when you're going against multiple casters. If you're against a Destro Warlock, a Frost Mage, and a Disc Priest, they could all potentially be casting huge things on you. You could get Ray of Frost while a cast bolt's going, while Mind Games is being sent off. All three of those things are coming out, and you need to instantly be able to shear one. If you have to switch targets and then use your wind shear, or just depend on just a focus wind shear on one target, you're going to miss out on potentially their opportunity to win and stopping that, which is one of the huge advantages of Shaman. So I recommend, this is another big one. This is a lot harder to get used to than just targeting, because it is using an ability on one of those targets. But I think this is probably the most important thing you get used to, particularly on Enhance in PvP. The next thing, outside of your damage rotation, lastly, targeting your party. I think this is much less important, but it still makes things a lot more fluid. Targeting your party with your keybinds with your mouse keybinds will allow you to switch targets and potentially heal them if you didn't go that route for the macro, or potentially apply Earth Shield or dispel them or any of those things without having to click them. Now, I do think the targeting your party is the least important of all the targeting ones for Enhance, but I would still recommend that you keybind it. So with that being said, everybody, those are my enhanced keybinds and macros. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. I want to thank you so much for the Twitch support. We did get declined as a Twitch partner, but we're going to be back at it again, reapplying very soon ahead of Shadowlands. So with that being said, I want to thank you guys so much, and definitely if you like this video, if you want to see more stuff, let me know down below what you'd like to see. I'm focusing on talking slower because that's the feedback you have told me, so I'm doing it here. So keep the constructive criticism coming, and we'll see you on stream or in the next one. Take care, everybody.